Welcome, one and all, to the Olympics edition of Clubhouse Live. I'm Heidi McDowell, your AAC Events Director. And tonight, we've got Kyra Condie and Alex Johnson as our super special guests. They'll be talking all things Olympics and giving us Olympic enthusiasts a bit of a fix since the Tokyo Games have been postponed until next year. Now it's time to introduce our guests. We've got Alex A.J. Johnson, who has been professionally climbing for 10 years. Growing up in the competition scene, Alex won her first youth national championship at age 12. Then in 2008, Alex made history by becoming the first American to win a bouldering World Cup on US soil. Since then, she's racked up the wins and the medals. In 2015, Alex retired from climbing competitively and shifted her focus towards outdoor climbing projects, building up an impressive tick list filled with dozens of iconic first female ascents, of climbs rated up to V13, and established several first ascents around the Southwest. But she couldn't stay away from the comp scene and decided to come out of retirement and return to competitive climbing to try to qualify for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. Since then, she's won a silver medal at the 2019 US Bouldering National Championships, earning her spot back on the US team. With us today, we've also got Kyra Condie, who is a competitive climber and member of the 2020 US Olympic team. She has an aggressive and quick climbing style that has been described by commentators as having reckless abandon on the wall. Introduced to climbing at the age of 11, Kyra was diagnosed with severe scoliosis just 2 years later, putting a halt to her climbing in order to get surgery. Returning to the sport with unwavering motivation, Kyra has gone on to win 2 first-place national titles in bouldering, and to become the 2019 USA Combined and National Champion. Now she's one of just 4 American sport climbers headed to the Tokyo Games in 2021. Let's give a big, warm American Alpine Club welcome to Kyra and Alex. Thanks for tuning in for tonight's Clubhouse Live.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Super psyched. We're filling the clubhouse with rad ladies.
Yeah, I'm excited. Thanks for the introduction. That was awesome.
I'll leave it to you two.
All right. Yeah. I guess is our slides going? I can't tell.
Yeah, right now it just looks like me and Kyra are the only 2 on a Zoom call.
There we go. All right. So I guess, to start out, like this last year was an insanely stressful and crazy year, I think, for both of us. Wouldn't you say, Alex?
Definitely.
It was the qualification year. You had to go to every World Cup, basically, in order to try and qualify for the Olympics. And this is just like kind of going to be a little bit of like some of our stories from those World Cups and some of the fun parts, some of the stressful parts. And yeah, just kind of like the way the whole season worked, I guess, is kind of what I was thinking. You go to the next slide.
Slide 1, where it all began.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is from mine and Alex's home gym back in Minnesota, Vertical Endeavors. And that's me in the very middle there in the soccer jersey. And
I'm Alex, in the Puma shirt.
Yeah, it's on the far right. Yeah.
Blonde.
And she actually started off as my coach. Oh, my cat's here. She started off as my coach when I was on a youth team there.
Yeah, Kyra and I have known each other for a really long time. I think she's like 11 in this photo, and I'm probably like 18 or 19. I don't even know. I might have still been in high school.
Yeah, you might have been.
But we never really like traveled or competed or climbed together until like this past year. I don't know if it was like the age difference or like when Kyra was like old or I moved away from Minnesota. So we hadn't really like spent a lot of time together. And so it was cool to like have this year traveling together, competing together, training together. We were roommates at most of the World Cups, and it was cool to like get to know each other on a completely different level than like this photo shows.
Yeah. If you go to the next slide too. So this is little baby me and Alex at one of the bouldering nationals it was in Washington, D.C. And you can see I just like totally looked up to Alex. Like when I started climbing,
I don't know why you wouldn't in this photo.
I had this, it was really cool to have somebody who was like competing on the World Cups and like doing well and winning, like right when I started climbing, because I had that dream immediately. I was like, oh, like there's World Cups in climbing. There's like this possibility. Like she started at this gym that I'm starting at. Like I saw all these parallels between me and Alex, and I think I really looked up to her for a long time because of that. But yeah, fun story about this too is that she almost missed ISO on that exact
right. Were you with me? Yeah. Did I make you almost miss ISO too?
Well, I was too young to be in that competition. But
okay. We like went out to dinner at this tapas restaurant in the middle of downtown DC, and it ended up taking us like way longer to get back on the train than we thought. And I like had to call the gym and be like, oh, I'm coming, please don't close ISO. I was like really late.
Yeah, I remember that. And so then this is Alex winning Vail, right?
Yep, 2008.
On the left here. And then that's me at my very first nationals in 2009. So you can just kind of see like when Alex was like winning World Cups for the first time, I was just starting and like getting this, getting started. Sorry, my cat is making an appearance here. If you go to the next slide then, here's just another one. This is my first World Cup. So Alex was still competing when I first started doing World Cups. And then on the right is at a World Cup this last year. Yeah, it's kind of cool.
Left is, yeah, Vail 2013, I think, or 14. 13 or 14. Holding France.
If we go to the next slide. So this year, like, really started, or I guess this last year really started kind of before bouldering nationals. So the year kind of really started with like combined nationals, then bouldering nationals, lead nationals. The first step was that we had to make first the US team to even have a chance of qualifying for the Olympics. And so Alex and I started training together, I think right after bouldering nationals, to really get in shape for lead. You can see the bottom right photo. That's like us climbing together at the A, which is in Minneapolis. And like pointing some circuits. But then the other two photos,
both of us working really hard.
Yeah.
Training camp.
Yeah, and then the other two photos, yeah, from training camp in Atlanta to train like all three disciplines and stuff, which is really important, obviously, for the Olympics. And then I guess it's from there we go into like the World Cups, really, which I think on the next slide. Yeah, this is from. So these are the left two photos are from the very first World Cup of the season, which I think both AJ and I would agree was our favorite one.
Definitely. Not surprisingly, also the one we both did the best at.
We did. Like we both made semifinals at that competition. It was in Meiringen, Switzerland. And it was the very start of the World Cup season. We had no idea, like we thought we were in good shape, but we weren't sure, you know, how we were ranking in the world at that time. And Alex especially had it. The last time she had competed was when? Like
7 years prior.
7 years prior, you got 7th place, right?
Yep. 7th place 5 times in a row. 6 go to finals in World Cups. So I spent my 2011 circuit in 7th place, 5 World Cups, and then the World Championships. And then I took 7 years off and then came back to do this Meiringen World Cup and got 7th.
Yeah, and I ended up 8th at that competition. So we both like went into the World Cup circuit. First comp, got 7th and 8th, like 2 spots out of finals, 1 spot out of finals. So it was a really good start to the season. And then like it went well after that, but never quite as well as it could have, I think, for both of us. If you go to the next slide.
Like when we start, like you start the season and you come into it kind of with this like blind confidence because you don't know who else is doing comps. You don't really know how fit they are. You don't know like what kind of shape anyone else is in. And you know that you've been like busting ass. And so coming into like the first World Cup I ever did, I won. And it was the same, like I would blame it on blind confidence. Like I didn't know who Anastor was. I didn't know who like Kata Saurain was. I didn't know who any of these people were. And you come in and you're just like, yeah, I'm great. Like I'm like hot stuff in America. Like I should be able to dominate. And that's like kind of this like blind confidence you come into the beginning of the season. And so both of us were just like, you try hard, you're moving well, you're confident, you're like enthusiastic, and then you sort of, as the season goes by, like start to see where the players fall and how you compare yourself to them and how you're lining up to them, and then it starts to like get in your head. I think that's what happened to me, because my season kind of went like
Yeah, I think I have to agree. And I think too, just more World Cup experience is always good. My cat is just wanting to be in this in this presentation. But so yeah, and then like the other difference this year that we had, and I think this was a big one, is that we actually had like a full team going to all these events because we were trying to get, you know, a full quota for the Olympics, and going to the more events meant a better chance of doing that. And so this was the first time we've had a full staff going. We had 2 coaches, Josh and Meg, and we had a PT, Zach, he's right in the middle there. Like we had the full team on like the far right. And it made a huge difference. Like Alex, you used to travel all the time without like anybody there for these times.
First season I did the World Cups, it was only me. And then the second season, it was myself and Alex Puccio, and we didn't really travel together. So this year, what was different was like those 2 years prior, I was having to book my own flights, book my own hotels, figure out where the gym is, figure out like accommodations, travel, like what airline, what airport, what like taxi or subway line, or like how to get around and in these like crazy places like Moscow, China. And so what I think was like the most amazing part of having staff this year was like you didn't have to think about that stuff. You could turn it off and only focus on like training, sleep, nutrition, competing. And you didn't have to be like, oh, my flight gets in at this time, I have to catch this bus to get on this train, ride it 14 stops, get off. It's like all these logistical things going on in your head you didn't have to think about. And so that was like one of the most incredible things about this past year. It was just like, not my problem.
Yeah, I would agree. And even like for me, having never had a coach, and you probably didn't really ever have coaches like consistently, like having these coaches who were there like filming you. You didn't have to ask friends to film you or your parents or like random people to try to, or other coaches to try and film you, and so that you could make appeals if you need to, things like that. It's like all these things that you would normally have to think about, and
going to check in.
Exactly, would take away
like
your energy for the actual competition.
Exactly.
And
you
so
just start up relaxed and not have to like, I have to be at check-in at 6 o'clock and the rules meeting at this time. Like the coaches just took care of everything. It was really relaxing.
Yeah, and so we're okay. In the far left, we're obviously in Moscow, and then on the upper right, we're in China, and then the bottom right, we're in Japan. So those are all just like from across like the whole world, honestly. But yeah, like the team camaraderie, I think was another huge aspect. Like Alex already talked about it, but like me and Alex were always friends, but never really close because there was such an age difference between us when we first met. Like I was this annoying little 11-year-old, and Alex was like this super cool World Cup winner 19-year-old, you know? So like we weren't super good friends at first. And then I think this year, like that's something that I really valued, was like just how much we were able to become friends. And that goes with the whole team. And these are more photos from Moscow, being tourists.
Total tourists.
So like Alex said, we were usually roommates here on the left. Like that was in one of our hotel rooms. And then on the right, that's us training in Innsbruck. Next slide.
Yeah, we were roommates almost every event, I think.
Pretty much, yeah. Which I think also like we were able to talk about like the things we were stressing like out about and things like that. Like totally. Part of the stress from this year was that we reevaluated our team at one point. So you had to make enough points basically from the World Cup season for our US team. Like so we had a system of ranking, and you had to maintain your spot on team to be able to go to World Championships, and World Championships was that Olympic qualifying event. And so that meant a big deal. So there's all this pressure on all these World Cups, not only to try and qualify for Toulouse, which was another qualification event, but it was also to keep your spot on the US team.
Yeah, it was like a lot of math, a lot of like Excel spreadsheets, like calculating how your friends are doing, because like honestly this past year, like if you were on the US team, your biggest competitors were your teammates. Like it didn't matter how anyone else in the world did, because we were like continuously fighting to keep our spots on the US team, which was like kind of a bummer when you really think about it. Like, I wish it would have been set up differently. I don't even know how, but based on combined nationals in January, which I did not get invited to because I'd taken too much time off or something, bouldering nationals in February, and lead and speed nationals in March. First place at combined was 600 points or something.
Something, but it was also a guaranteed spot on the team.
Yeah. And then first place at bouldering nationals, 200 points. And so it goes like 200, 180 for second, but I'm not exactly sure. But then at World Cups, it was 600 points for a first place down to 30th place. And so whenever you have a teammate get in the top 30, they get points on top of their combined bouldering, lead, and speed points. And so it's however your teammates end up, everyone was constantly like, wow, Margot got 17th and I got 8th. Is that she was already ahead of me? Do I pass her? And it was like this, it sucked, honestly, because it turned us into like our own biggest competitors. And we were just constantly doing math and like reorganizing the Excel spreadsheet. And I had this like in my phone was like, okay, I need to get this place at this comp in order to move up. And it was like kind of shitty.
Yeah, it was definitely really stressful the year. Just like, I mean, there was a lot of math this year in general.
Yeah.
The combined events take a lot of math. You know, you have to multiply all the ranks together. And then, yeah, in order to like stay on the US team, we had to do all this math. Like we did, I think there was multiple nights where AJ and I were like putting in different potential scores of people, like being like, hey,
so like if I get this place and so gets this place, is that enough for me to move up to get? And it was like the ultimate goal was like 1, be invited to world championships, which is top 6, and 2, be funded.
Yeah. And yeah, I think it was, if we hadn't have had like this time to travel as a team and like create that camaraderie that we had, like I think all that competition like within our team would have sucked a lot more, honestly.
It would have been way worse
because everyone is such good friends. Like it definitely was stressful, but like everyone was still actually like happy for each other when everybody did well, which
right. And even in the start of the season, like there was maybe like unspoken animosity because everyone knew that we were like fighting for these positions. And then as the season went on and we just like hung out more and more, it was like, all right, you're not that bad.
That's Alex's pessimistic view of things. If you go to the next slide, I think we can start talking about lead World Cups. So yeah, so that was the beginning of the season. Like bouldering is like both Alex and I's specialty. It was definitely what we were more excited about. And lead was stressful. And so Alex didn't get to go to the first couple lead World Cups because we didn't reevaluate our team until World Champs. So it was probably even more stressful for Alex because she had to just watch people and see how they were doing. And I was just head case at these first couple comps. I kept doing really well on one climb. Yeah, I was a basket case. I don't know what it was. I kept doing really well on one climb and then like falling at like the second bolt on another climb. And it would have been like well into semifinals and then like terrible. So it was like it was a mess for me. I think the right one is a video if it'll play. And it's just me like totally almost whiffing this clip. It's just an example of I don't know if the video will play. But it's just me like almost slipping at like just a point where I should not have slipped. And then it messed me up for the rest of the route. So that was like kind of how my lead season was going up until World Champs. And then Alex and I both got to go to the competitions after that. If you go to the next slide.
Yay.
Lead climbing.
I don't know what it is about like putting on a harness, but it immediately drops me like 7 grades of difficulty. Like I'm not good at that at all. And I trained, like I thought I was training for it really well and right. And I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have started this whole process an entire year earlier because I learned so much. I'd never done a lead World Cup before. And so I learned so much just going that by the time I figured out like what I needed to do to train and like how they worked and like what the routes were kind of like, it was like, it's over, season's over. And so I think the only thing I would really do different, like if I were going to do this now, if I knew then what I knew now, I think I would do a lot better and I would do a lot of things differently. So it was like, unfortunately, like a crazy learning experience that like this leading to nothing, but I learned a lot, but for no reason, because I'll never do lead World Cups again.
Yeah, I think it's kind of weird because, you know, as boulders, we kind of have to be strategic in like how we do it, especially when training for the combined. It's kind of like, do you lean into your strength or do you work on your weakness? And there's kind of like, yeah, two different ways. And I know some people who definitely tried to lean into their strengths, and there's some people who tried to work on their weaknesses, and like it paid off in both directions sometimes. But it was a really hard decision because it's like you can't really undo what you did. It's like if I work on my lead climbing, my bouldering is going to suffer. But if I have a chance of getting a really good score in bouldering, it's you know, it balances out. And so that was like one of the other really stressful parts of the season is like you go to the gym and it's like, what do I train? Like I have no idea what to train. Like, do I train bouldering? Do I train speed? Do I train lead? Do I train power endurance? Like that seems useful.
You split your day and do all three. Yeah. Scheduling that out was like definitely stressful.
For sure. Okay, if we go to the next slide. So this is just kind of a funny story, I guess, is we went to the Lead World Cup in Inzai in Japan, which is kind of near one of the airports. So it's kind of on the outskirts of Tokyo. And it's like, there's a bullet train that like goes straight to there. It's like 40 minutes. We did not think anything of it. We're like, okay, we're just going to go to this train station and we're going to take this bullet train and we'll be within 40 minutes. So let's like dilly dally. It'll be fine. Turns out there was a typhoon. And when a typhoon happens, all the trains shut down.
And some of the highways.
And the highway that goes straight to the airport. And so we were literally staying in an airport hotel. Like that's where we were trying to get. And we went through 10 different trains, a taxi for 5 hours that only went 12 kilometers. And that's that middle photo. That's about probably 7 hours into our day that should have only taken 40 minutes.
Right.
We were clearly in great moods. I think at one point we ditched half of our group because we were going crazy. And we're like, okay, like we can't, like you go in that car, we'll go in this car.
We're not being efficient enough with the size of our group. And I was like, we need to trim the fat here.
And so that's
taxi. We're going in this taxi. We'll see you when you get there. And we like didn't. Our team was in, man, total disarray. Like some people got on the train and got there in time. I think of like
typhoon hit, yeah.
The 12 of us who were there, we were in groups of like 2, 3, maybe 4, and everyone was like total disperse. Yeah. No one knew, like everyone was late. No one knew where anyone was. We were all taking these crazy roundabout ways to get there. Like little Estelle in the middle photo was like 16, and Kyra and I were like, Estelle, get in the taxi. And she was like, oh, I'll take the next one. And we're like, no, you're getting in this taxi. Like you're not traveling around by yourself. So it was like we were watching movies in the taxi, like literally not moving. And at one point we just were like, we'll get out and walk. We'll be there faster. And we got out and walked and like found a train station with all our luggage. Oh my God, it was such a nightmare.
That was crazy. That was probably our worst travel experience of the whole year, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay, if we go to the next slide, then I think next part is, this is like more Lead World Cup. So the big difference that I had, so there was Lead World Cups before World Championships, and then there was Lead World Cups after World Championships as well. And, you know, ideally, you know, we would have both qualified at World Championships, but that did not happen for either of us. And so then we kind of had to keep focusing on, we had to keep focusing on these Lead World Cups. And so something I changed that made a huge difference for me was I started talking to a sports psychologist because I was like, I am in my head on these climbs. Like, I don't know what's going on. Like I'm clearly strong enough to make semifinals because I can do that on one climb and I just can't do this on this other climb. And so talking to the sports psych really helped. And the biggest thing that I did was instead of, I'd be climbing and I'd be thinking about this crux that's at like maybe the 5th bolt. And that's messing me up as I'm lower because I'm thinking about this crux that's higher and it's not letting me think about what I'm doing at the moment. And so this present focus idea was what she really like tried to like tell me about. And it really helped. Like, so I remember like in this photo that was getting taken right here, like there was a rest. And in the rest, you can like think ahead and be like, okay, like that's my next move. That's my next move. But as you're doing those moves, you're not trying to think about anything else other than the moves that you're doing. And so like, I feel like this left photo, like that's something that I was really like, this was the first comp that I tried that at, and it really made a difference. And I actually made my first semifinal for that year at that Lead World Cup. So I guess World Championships, first Olympic qualification event. So basically as Americans, there was 3 chances for us to qualify. First one was World Championships. Second one was Toulouse qualification event. And then the third one would have been the Pan American Championships. So there's a lot riding on world champs. And like we said, the strategy was really difficult. Like, what do you focus on? Do you focus on your strength? Do you focus on your weakness? Like, what should you do? And so for me, the bouldering actually went quite well. I made semifinals, but then the semifinal round was rugged. You only needed one top to make finals. And so I think I ended up 14th. So it was a good start to the comp for me. And then it just went downhill from there. How'd it go for you, Alex?
Horrible.
Yeah.
For starters, I think I timed out on the top of 2 boulders, and had I topped those 2, I would have been in semifinals in second place.
Yeah, well into semifinals. I remember that.
Yeah. And then on the 4th boulder, I broke my foot.
That's right. Yeah, there was this like jump across move, and we were in different groups, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so me and Alex weren't on the same boulders in that qualifying round, and there's one boulder that was the same where you jumped across, and Alex had like third go, like just smashed your foot into it.
I landed on the volume and I felt it go, and I was like, oh, that's broken, and then like kept climbing and was like super distracted, and then was like reaching for the finish, and it was like boop, boop, time, and I was like, cool, that's cool. And then I dropped down and was like, I have 2 more boulders to do. My foot's broken. And then I like didn't get off the start of boulder number 4, but I don't know that anyone did. Maybe one
that was the one that like only like Laura Agora did, I think.
I don't even know that my foot left the ground. I don't know that I ever like actually got on the wall. It was
Really?
so gnarly. And then I flashed the 5th boulder, and so I flashed 2 and 5 and timed out on finish holds of 1 and 3, and so doing those would have put me in semis, which was cool, except then I would have like had a broken foot in semis. But it ended up sucking anyway, because then I had to do lead 2 days later on a broken foot, and then speed 4 days later on a broken foot. Not that it affected my performance at all. I'm pretty sure I did about the same as I would do on a not broken foot for lead and speed, but it sucked.
Yeah, it doesn't help your head at the very least.
Yeah.
So I guess, yeah, on that same note about world championships, yeah, it was then really stressful if you go to the next slide. So like we said, like there was only these 2 spots left in the, or 2 spots available even for the Olympics. There's two women and 2 men. And so we were competing for these 2 spots, basically with like 6, 7 of us who had a good shot from the US, like of girls who had a good shot of making it, which added this really stressful environment. And then Brooke Rabbit qualified at world championships. And that like, I don't know about you, Alex, but that sent my stress like skyrocketing, because now instead of having 2 spots, there was 1. And like Alex and I, like something we talked about the whole time was like, oh, it'd be so sick if it was both of us who make it. And then as soon as like that happened, one of the spots was gone, it's like, okay, well now only one of us can make it. Like that kind of sucks, you know? Like super happy for Brooke, obviously, like don't want to make it sound like that's not the case, but stress was high, like because 2 spots.
For me, it was like de-stressing, because I was like, holy shit, it is possible. I think up until Brooke qualified, I was like, no way, dude, none of us are gonna make it. It's so hard.
Total opposite.
Qualified, and I was like, oh, we can do this. Oh my god.
Yeah, that's like actually total opposite of me. Like, because me, I was like, okay, there's 2 spots. Like, I think I have a spot in Toulouse. Like, I can definitely make this. Like, and then you know, if whoever else makes it to Toulouse, like maybe those will be the 2 spots. Like, I don't know. And so actually, that's partially why I got my tattoo. Is I was very stressed after, which is on the left here. I was really stressed after World Champs, and like had to remind myself that I'm doing the right things. Like it was super inspiring to see that it was possible, and like that we're doing the right things and stuff. But I needed like that reminder that I was doing the right things, and that this is something that was possible, and that yeah. And so that's what the You Suck Try Harder means to me, I guess. It's also written on the wall in my gym back home in Minnesota. That's on the right photo.
Okay, you're not giving it enough credit. That was your gym's like whole motto from the get-go.
Also that, yeah. No, there's a lot of reasons, but that's one of the reasons. That's the timing. That's why I got it when I got it, I guess, is as this like reminder. And then it's also a reminder of like my home and to stay humble and all these other things. But I think it's a funny story of this like stress that led to it. If you go to the next slide, I think, then this is Alex.
Having fun.
Having fun.
After no like the most stressful season ever. I think this was right after Toulouse, after you qualified, and it was like there was one part of me that was like, oh, I'm so bummed. And then like this whole other part of me that was like, oh, it's over. It was like relief almost. And the first thing I did was like go rock climbing again.
Yeah. Yeah, you look like you're having a lot of fun in these photos, which is sweet. If you go to the next slide, we also both moved to Salt Lake in this time, actually. Was like kind of in that
That's
time
cool.
after World Champs before Toulouse.
These photos are super new, actually. They were just taken a couple days ago, but since like Olympic qualifiers for the girls ended in November, for me it was like, well, heartbreaking and relief, whatever, at the same time. But it was also like I get to go back to like my roots, I guess. Not roots as in root climbing, but even though that's what I'm doing here, but roots as in like being in the outdoors, like rock climbing, and that's like where my heart was before this whole journey happened. And then in 2018, I was like, man, I've never really applied myself and like really trained, and I wonder if I had a shot at qualifying for the Olympics. And that's sort of what that whole comeback was. And so I like didn't climb outside for over a year during the like training and competing process. And then like the second Kyra qualified, I was like, shit, well, I get to rock climb again. And it was this whole like wave, like inconsistent, bittersweet, like whatever. And so like since November, I've been climbing outside a lot. One, lately there's no World Cups to train for because the season's been, I'm pretty sure, canceled, if not postponed because of COVID. And two, like I don't have to train for the Olympics. And I think if I had qualified, like Kyra's like in the training center every day busting ass. And I think if I had qualified, I hope I would be doing the same thing and not just like slacking because stuff was postponed. But for me, it's like I get to go back outside and be in nature, and I love training, but this is kind of where my heart is. And so these photos were just taken this past week. I'm out with Tim Kemple. We're rebolting this route, and it was so cool. I'd never done it before, and I was like really nervous to do it, like scared I was gonna mess something up. And he like hung up on the wall with me, and we just like went through and like he taught me how to do everything, and then I did it, and it was like something that I was so proud of because it's this route that I'm working on, and it was cool to like have this sense of pride of fixing the bolts on it because they were from like the 90s, I think, and they were all rusted. And it was like I'm rock climbing again, and I'm like trying hard again, but this is like maybe this other avenue that I'm going to go to since I didn't qualify. So it's like a bittersweet thing. Like I'm bummed I didn't make it, but I also get to like do this other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. I think like I was like preparing myself for that same possibility because it was absolutely a possibility with how strong everybody on our team is, you know. But I think watching Brooke qualify at World Champs like really made me realize how much I wanted it, and that was a big like, and that was a stressor. Like I'd kind of been like I knew I wanted it, and I was trying really hard and was like training really hard for it and was focused on it. But having that happen was like what made me really realize that like this is what I want and I want it bad. So if you go to the next slide, I can talk about Toulouse a little bit. So in order to qualify for Toulouse, which was the second event that you could qualify for, or qualify for the Olympics at, you had to do well at all the World Cups throughout the entire season. So that meant your best 2 lead results, your best 2 bouldering results, and your best 2 speed results. And so if you went to all the bouldering World Cups, you had a better chance of getting a good result. And so you had to go to all the bouldering ones, and then you ended up going to all the lead ones. And so it was a long season. And then at the end of all that, you hope you get an invite, and then you have to go compete at the Olympic qualifying event. And so it was a lot of stress leading up to it. And then there was this whole chaos about invites because there was this big confusion about whether or not countries could send more than 2 per gender to that event. And they actually had it wrong. And so it ended up that we could send more than 2. And so that there was all this confusion right before the event, which was just adding to stress. And so I've never been so stressed before an event in my life. I didn't sleep the entire week that I was in France. We had a team of 5 there. It was me, Margot, Ashima, Nathaniel, and Sean Bailey. And yeah, so we were all there the week before. I didn't sleep for more than I think 2 hours a night for that entire week. I was stressing out. I kept like waking up thinking of speed climbing. Like I was just like picturing myself speed climbing because I think it's because speed climbing is always the same. Like you can't really picture your bouldering like at a comp. You're like, you kind of picture amorphous boulders and like amorphous lead climbing. You picture yourself climbing, but not on a specific route, but in speed, it's always the same. So you know exactly down to like the timing of the buzzer, like what it's going to be. And so you can picture it. And that's what was keeping me up at night. And so once speed was done at that day of Toulouse, because it ended up being a single day competition essentially, I was feeling a lot more confident because I had done really well. I got like a competition PR and was like the best of the non-speed specialists at the event. So I got 6th in speed. And then bouldering, I was like kind of like killing myself because I could have done like slightly better. I like just whiffed the top of the last boulder. And if I had done that, I would have been like set. I wouldn't have even had the lead con pretty much. And I would have had my spot. And so it kind of like came down to a lot of pressure on this lead climb. And I did a pretty good job calming myself down beforehand. I figured out this thing, a couple things that I like listening to opera music in competition zones. Because so I before going to Toulouse, I cleared off my entire iPod Nano, and because you're not allowed internet access in the ISO, and I just put 11 opera songs on it, and I shuffled them, and that's what I listened to in ISO the whole time. And then I also discovered that if I talked to myself in Spanish, I wasn't able to have a lot of crazy thoughts because I was focusing so hard on speaking Spanish to myself. So those were my 2 methods of calming myself down in Toulouse itself. And then after I finished lead climbing, that's this like far left photo, I was just sitting there with 2 phones, one like looking at results and the other one doing math, like me and Alex were talking about. Just so much math this season, just calculating like possible results. Okay, like if I get 13th in lead, like what will my score be? If I get 12th in lead, what will my score be? Okay, the worst I can do now is 11th, like what will my score be? And then as soon as it was I think the 3rd to last person came out, and that's when I became certain of my score. And that's when I like realized it. And this is the series of events of me realizing I qualified, and then my parents were there and them hugging me, which is really cute. And then yeah, so that's like kind of how Toulouse went, I guess. And then if you go to the next slide, I think there's maybe a couple more. That's me with Josh, our coach, and then Shauna Coxey. This is just like kind of a good example of how like the camaraderie even among like other teams like across the world is. Like Shauna's on, you know, like the UK team, and like all of us are really good friends. And so that's something I think really unique to climbing, is that like everybody who's going to the Olympics like has known each other for years and is like good friends. It's not just like competitors. I think that's something really unique to climbing. If you go to the next slide, I think this is coming home from Toulouse, and Alex came to the airport and met me and Nathaniel there after we qualified. And then a bunch of our other friends from Salt Lake did as well. So that was really sweet. And you can't see them, but Nathaniel's entire family is on the left of this photo. Like,
oh yeah,
giant family.
It was so nice. Like I think you guys started competing. It was like Thanksgiving Day that you guys were competing, and so I set my alarm for like 5 a.m. or something so I could wake up and watch the live stream. And then the second, I think Nathaniel qualified a day before you guys did, and I texted his mom and I was like, we should do this thing, and she was like, okay. And then I didn't know it was gonna be like
everyone,
40 family. It was
a lot.
He's got a
lot of family in Salt Lake.
And then Kyra qualified, and Claire and I were texting, and we were like, well, Nathaniel's family is coming, and they're inviting like the Momentum youth team and all this stuff, and we were like, well, we'll just tell everyone. And then we were like making signs that day, and I stole the giant Team USA banner from the training center.
Sick,
it's like 14 feet long. It's huge. And I was like folded it up and was like running through the airport with it and was like, oh my God, they're coming soon. And then like an hour and a half later, you guys actually came. Like your flight was super delayed or customs or something.
Yeah.
Like, I was texting everyone. I was like, you guys are going to be late. You're going to miss him. And it was like super casual. Like we were not in a hurry.
There's a kind of funny story. Like, so since most of my family's in Minnesota, when I went home for Christmas in December, my mom planned a surprise at that airport as well. It was like 2 weeks after this. And like, so then I was completely surprised. Like I kind of had an idea that this would maybe happen at the Salt Lake airport. I was like really happy, but I was shocked when when there's so many people at the Minnesota airport. Like I was texting my dad. I was like, okay, I'm going to be at baggage claim like 6. Like if you pick me up at door 4, it'll be fine. And then he's like, okay, I'm coming around now. And then I walk out and there's like just tons of people. I was like, whoa, kind of funny. But then, yeah, obviously, if you go to the next slide, the Olympics have been delayed a year. So instead of Tokyo 2020, we got Tokyo 2021, which It's a bummer for sure. Like kind of like Alex, I was really looking forward to like being able to focus on something else after the Olympics ended. But this is also just like a really exciting time, like in climbing in my life and stuff like that. And so I'm just trying to find the positives in it. Nobody gets to be qualified for a year and a half for the Olympics. Like that's crazy.
Totally.
So
Someone, when we did our Instagram live thing, someone was like, Kyra, are you bummed the Olympics were postponed? And I was like, I'll answer for her. No, she gets another year to train. Like she's psyched.
Yeah, no, and I feel like I've not had as much experience on the World Cups as some people, and like other people on our team, especially like Colin Duffy, who qualified at Pan Am's, has never been to a World Cup, which is crazy. And so this extra year is going to make a big difference, I think, for a lot of people on the U.S. team here. So or Team USA. So yeah, I guess now would be the time for us to answer questions if there are any.
Is anybody watching? We have no idea.
Yeah, we can't see actually.
I only see Kyra.
Well, the good news is people are tuned in and we've been getting some questions in. So for those of you who are tuned in, if you do have a question for Kyra or AJ, just drop it into the comments field, but we can get started with a couple that have already come in. You touched on this a little bit, but because it's such a unique thing, I really like this question. How do you handle being both friends and competitors forced to face off against each other?
I think when it like really comes down to it, who, aside from this past season, it's not a who we're competing against, it's a what we're competing against, and it's never felt like a who up until like this year, which was like kind of an anomaly, and that's why it sucked so much, is like we did feel a little weird, not specifically Kyra and I, but like all of us. But even like that was only really when we weren't climbing. So like in the hotel room, it was like, I gotta do better than Ashima at this comp in order to move my ranking up. And that's when it was like sucky. But like the second that you come out of ISO and you turn around and you see the wall, there's like, you're not competing against those people or anyone else. It's like what's in front of you at that time. It's not a who, it's a what.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think also all of us value like our friendships more in general. Like, we're really competitive people. But like that's part of it. And it's like, we all know that we all want this, and that like we have this understanding, I think, between all of us. Like I know this person wants it just as bad as I want it. And so if they get it, like I'll be bummed for me, but happy for them. And that's kind of the way I've always seen it. It's like, you can be sad for yourself, like but still happy for someone else.
Totally. It's never cutthroat, and you're never like rooting for someone else to do poorly or to fail. You just really want like yourself to do well. It's not like, it's never been I want them to do bad, so I beat them. It's like, regardless of them, they don't matter. They're not there. They don't exist. It's like how I have to do. So it's, the second we like start competing, it's not against each other.
I love that. I think that speaks so much to the climbing community.
Totally. I mean, there have been times where like Kyra and I have been on the mat at the same time, and we're like walking up to the boulder, and we'll look over and be like, yeah.
Or behind the wall, like we're in different groups. Like in World Champs, I remember we were talking the whole time, and you're like, my foot hurts, and I was like, what'd you do?
Yeah.
Or even at that same competition, like Shauna Coxey was super sick. She had a really bad cold, like behind the wall at that competition. But then it was really hot back there, and she kept, when she was going out to the mat, she would give me her fan so that I could like cool off, because she could tell I looked super hot. So it's like everybody's competitors, everybody wants to win, but like everybody's friends as well. So it's a really
totally
unique environment, I think.
Yeah, it's like an individual sport that we're all in together.
Yeah.
Love that. So this next question comes to us from an audience member named Max. He is wondering, Kyra, you mentioned that the benefit from seeing a sports psychologist. At what level or time in a person's climbing career would you recommend somebody look into a sports psychologist?
I mean, I honestly think it's something anybody could benefit from. like even if it's, you know, a mental barrier to lead climbing, like you're scared of falling. I'm still kind of scared of falling.
Same.
Like even if it's something like that, or like, you know, for me, it was really specific. It was like, I want to do well at a lead World Cup and I am getting in my own way. But like, there's like small things that I never would have thought of that can apply to my everyday climbing, you know, not just World Cups. So I think kind of, if you think you would benefit from it, like you probably would.
Definitely. I don't think you need to have like a traumatic experience or like a specific issue in order to see it. It's like you don't even know you have problems until you start talking to a sports psych and you're like, oh wow, yeah, I am pretty self-deprecating. That's like anyone can and should talk to a sports psych.
Agreed. So this question is for both of you. Now that climbing is in the Olympics, or, you know, will be in 2021, where do you think the sport is headed? Because this is kind of a big thing. We're blowing up on the international stage, and what does that mean for climbing?
I think this is a question we get a lot, but I don't. Who knows? Who knows?
I mean, I've definitely noticed a lot more, like, I guess, like big, like non-climbing industry, like publications and stuff be interested in climbing. Like New York Times has done a couple of like pieces on climbing specifically, like on Adamandra, and then Mia and Luchka from Slovenia. Brooke and I did a shoot with Rolling Stone, like the magazine, which I never would have thought was a thing that would have been interested in climbing, you know? So like, definitely seeing some changes, even just from when I was like 11 years old, you know, like, and that wasn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things.
I think as far as making it more mainstream, that'll be really cool because I think it's a kind of a complex, obscure sport for people who don't do it to understand, especially competitive climbing. Like you go outside and it's like bottom, top, like that makes sense. And then you go to World Cups and it's like, how many boulder problems? And it's your average, but that one's worth a point, and it's like, that's confusing. Lead is like a little more straightforward, who gets the highest, and then speed is like the most basic, like that person won. And I think speed is going to be like what ends up possibly being like the most exciting and popular part of climbing in the Olympics, which
honestly, to be fair, it's my favorite thing to watch.
Same.
Nothing is more exciting than a speed final.
It's I started the season like I had a really bad relationship with speed, and I was like, this is so dumb. And then towards the end of the season, I was like, this is the only like discipline in sport that you can see quantifiable progress. And so it was like, oh, my PR dropped 3. It's like running. Like you train strength for it, it's power, and you get quantifiable progress. And it's like, it's super sick to watch.
And Alex knows that because she used to be a track athlete. She's a
as far as like, I don't know, it's hard to speak on like climbing's exponential growth in the outdoors due to the Olympics directly. To me at this point, personally, indoor climbing and outdoor climbing almost feel like two different sports to me. I think they've like completely segregated and they're kind of going in totally different directions. And I don't think that that's a bad thing. I don't know. It could be a good or bad thing. Like people start in gyms and maybe they do want to venture out, and the more populated the gyms are, the more people we will have going outside. But I feel like the Olympics is going to get a lot of like kids psyched on climbing, which I think is great because it was a sport that to me just like built confidence and solid relationships and allowed me to travel the world. But I don't see it being like this like extreme detriment to the outdoors. But I don't know. Maybe it's like wishful thinking.
I liked that sign that one of your friends was holding, Kyra, when you showed up back at the airport or back home after qualifying, and it said superheroes are real. I was like, yeah.
Yeah, those are really cute. I still have some of them in my room.
So this next question comes from Scott. He is wondering, Kyra, which strategy seemed to work better for you, focusing on what you're good at, bouldering, or your weaknesses?
So I kind of specifically actually focused on my strengths. So my strategy going into Toulouse specifically was that a lot of the really good boulderers had qualified at world champs. And that meant that a lot of the really good lead climbers were going to Toulouse. And so I knew that no matter how much I trained Toulouse in this, I mean, trained for Toulouse in lead climbing, like in this finite amount of time, that I was not going to get better than these lead specialists. Like I knew that I was going to at least, like at best, get ninth in the lead. So I was like, okay, but I know that I could win bouldering if I really focus on bouldering. And I knew that a lot of those lead climbers were really bad at speed. And I've always had a pretty natural ability at speed. And I just competed in it as a youth just because I never actually didn't even have a speed wall in Minnesota. Like I never touched a speed wall in Minnesota. Like I was just like kind of naturally good at it. And so I moved to Salt Lake and trained my ass off in speed climbing and like competition style boulders. And that's really what I focused on. And I made sure to maintain my lead ability so that I could still get that like worst or best place that I thought I could get, which was like ninth. And I think I ended up in there. I was like 9th to 11th. I don't remember what spot. But I pretty much like had the nail on the head about how I was going to do it. Like I got the highest of the non-speed specialists in speed. So I got 6th place. Bouldering could have gone better. Like I could have been like top 5, but like I whiffed the last hop. So I got like 8th, I think, or 10th, somewhere in there. And then lead, I got exactly what I guessed, basically. So it worked out well. Like that was one of the times that the strategy worked out. It did not work out as well for like world champs because I tried that kind of same strategy, but I didn't commit to it as much.
Mm-hmm. AJ, what about you? Do you prefer to focus on what you're good at or your weaknesses?
I would say I agree with Kyra now. And that was sort of like going back on like, if I knew then what I know now, would I do things a little differently? Yes. I think like Kyra nailed it when she was like, I could train lead for 3 years and still get 50th place. Like the girls who do lead, they're like, you can't catch them really. And so if I were to go back and do it again, I would focus on the 2 power disciplines like bouldering, which is my specialty, and speed. I think having more time is something that I could have been better at. But I was trying to train all 3 at the same time. So I would do like 2 days a week of bouldering, 1 day a week of speed, 1 day a week of lead. And so I was doing 4 days on, like 2 a days, double sessions, and then 3 rest days. So it was like 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 2 days off. And like, I think all of my lead training was like a colossal waste of time. It was like, no matter what I did, like I was still basically doing endurance on like 5'11". Like I wasn't, when I went to world championships, I think I was like physically the strongest I'd ever been. And I got the best score on any lead route I'd ever did. And I don't think that had anything to do with like lead fitness. I think it was because I was strong. And so
yeah.
taking that strategy and like focusing more on bouldering and speed, where you get like fast twitch power, like your RFD, like you're able to latch holds faster when you focus on that kind of power, and then just like overall strength. That's the best I did on a lead route anyway, was when I was training strong wise, like strength, and then strong wise, I don't know what I'm saying. When I was training strength, I did the best at lead. So like retrospectively, I would have focused more on specifically bouldering probably 3 days a week, and then like 1 or 2 days a week of speed, and then the rest of it like maybe endurance at the end of a bouldering session. But I could have spent like way less time on endurance.
Yeah, I think even
are like hard. They're really hard.
That's the other thing. You can really lean into your strength on a lead route too. Like my strength is power endurance. I have like good power endurance, but not good like endurance. So it's kind of funny. There'd always be like kind of an easier qualifying route and then a hard qualifying route, and I would get the same score on both. Like this one would be the one that people were topping, and then people would be falling at like hold 17 on this one because it was hard, and I would get to hold 30 on both. Like the hard one and the easy one, because it didn't matter like how hard the moves were. It's just I had this like
really underestimate I completely underestimated the lead routes. Like I was like, oh, I just need endurance. It's like 13A, and it's like not at all 13A. Like it starts out with like a V8 boulder problem, and then you kind of maybe get like a shitty rest, and then it just is like it never really lets up. And so there was like one route in Slovenia that I remember, like I don't know that anyone got past the second bolt except for like Yanya, Kyra. It was like the boulders did better on it because it was so hard.
Yeah, that's the one I was thinking of with what I was just going to.
Like it was literally V9 off the ground, and I just was like, what is this? And I like got so pumped from trying so hard that I just was like, this sucks. But they're like hard routes. I completely underestimated them. And so I would have like for sure trained more strength and power, and endurance like didn't matter because I didn't get any higher anyway.
There you have it. Endurance is out, power is in.
Totally.
Coming from the two boulders.
The stronger you are, the better the holds feel and the easier the moves are.
That is true though.
It makes sense. The logic checks out.
I hope so, because I'm telling myself that.
So the next question, which looks like will be our last one, as we're almost out of time here, comes from Joel. He is curious if you've talked to national team athletes from other countries that are able to publicly fund their teams. If you have, what have you learned about their experiences as national athletes in regards to training and funding, et cetera, versus yours as American athletes?
So I guess this year, just to start, was a little different. We did have funding from our national federation, from USA Climbing, that came from the USOPC, which is the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and that's basically like the USOPC's entire job is to try to get medals at the Olympics, and so that means supporting the different NGBs, which is national governing bodies of the different sports, in whatever way they can, so that they can best train their athletes so that they can try to get medals at the Olympics. And so this was our first year getting funding, but not everybody got funding. It kind of bounced around. It kind of sucked. That was another thing that added weird tension to our team. I think I could talk about that for sure.
I consistently got zero funding for 12 months.
Oh.
I was always like one spot out. Like they were always like, we'll fund the top 4.
And
then I think I went from like 14th. My rank was like 14th to like 6th to 3rd. And I was like, sick, I'm getting funding. And then it was like when they came to reevaluate, I was like 5th. And I was like, God damn it. So I spent the entire year. I have 2 credit cards. I maxed them both out, and I was like $35,000 or $40,000 in debt.
Wow.
Or something.
Yeah, the World Cups are not cheap.
It's not cheap.
Holy cow.
A big privilege to be able to go to them.
But to go from like USA Climbing funding 0 athletes to any World Cups ever to them all of a sudden being able to fund 8, so they did 4 men and 4 women, was, I think, for our, regardless of like how bitter I got for like being the only one that was never funded, I think that sort of progress for our sport and our governing body was like pretty monumental. My personal feelings aside. Yeah, basically everyone was doing this around me, and I was just like 5th.
There's something
big deal.
Consistency.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah, and then it kind of differs between other countries as well. I guess that's more specifically what the question was about. We haven't talked, it's not something we all talk about a lot. Some countries get government funding because as athletes, they count as part of the military. They do like some military service, and then basically are athletes for the government, kind of. I don't quite understand how it works. I know like Austria is that way, and so is Slovenia. And then I know like in Norway, like you can get like a salary from the government for being an athlete for the country, basically. So it completely varies in different countries.
So we should all move to Norway.
Yeah.
Totally.
Awesome. Well, we're out of time, sadly. Sorry to those of you in the audience whose questions we didn't have a chance to get to. But thank you, everybody, for joining us here in the AAC's Clubhouse. Extra special shout out to our guests, Kyra and AJ. You guys rock. Thanks so much for coming and sharing your stories. Kyra, super excited to watch you in the Olympics next year.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. And if you all enjoyed this session and it's within your means, consider making a small donation to support your American Alpine Club. You can grab your smartphone and just text the word uniting to 44321. That's uniting to 44321, or click the link we just dropped into the comments or are about to drop into the comments on the Facebook page. Every dollar raised supports our efforts protecting wild places, educating climbers, preserving climbing history for all to enjoy, our grant programs, and of course, community events like Clubhouse Live. Be sure to mark your calendars for the next Clubhouse Live. It's going to be a special virtual farewell for our CEO, Phil Powers. After 15 years of service to the AAC, he is retiring, or at least getting as close to retiring as someone like Phil Powers can get. And we want to send him off in style. So he'll be joined by special guests like Tom Hornbein, Allison Osius, and more. So be sure to tune in on July 23rd to send Phil Powers off in style. Thanks everybody for tuning in to the Clubhouse Live. Kyra, AJ, thank you so much for being here, for sharing your stories.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, anytime. Thanks.